Welcome back to my channel. Today we explore the value of specific coins, the top 6 most valuable U.S. Jefferson nickel coins value in today's market. So let's get started. First up, the 1949 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark holds a modest but noteworthy place. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the 1949 nickel struck in Philadelphia, how to identify it, and what it's worth in today's collector market. First, let's talk about what makes this coin identifiable. The 1949 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. On coins from this era, the absence of a mint mark under Monticello on the reverse side indicates Philadelphia production. This is a common characteristic for coins from that mint before 1980. The obverse of the coin features the familiar left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson. Designed by sculptor Felix Schlag, the reverse shows Jefferson's home, Monticello, with the inscriptions, E pluribus, una Monticello, 5 cents, in United States of America. In terms of mintage, over 60 million of these coins were struck in Philadelphia in 1949. This makes the coin relatively common when compared to lower mintage issues in the Jefferson series. However, collectors still seek examples in higher grades, and in original, uncleaned condition. Now, let's get into value. If you have a 1949 Jefferson nickel from Philadelphia in circulated but decent condition, let's say, what collectors call good to very fine, the coin's value is typically modest. On the current market, such a coin usually sells for between 15 cents and 50 cents. While that's well above face value, it's not a rare or high-demand item in average condition. However, if the coin is in extremely fine or uncirculated condition, particularly with original luster and no signs of wear, their value can be significantly higher. Mint state examples: graded MS62, MS65 by professional grading services, can range in value from $2 to $10 depending on quality, strike, and eye appeal. It's important to remember that condition is everything in the coin world. A coin that's been cleaned, scratched, or heavily worn will be worth much less than one that's been well preserved. If you believe your 1949 nickel is in exceptional shape, it may be worth having it professionally graded. But for most people, finding this coin in pocket change or an old coin jar, it's a fun piece of history with a small collector's premium. So while the 1949 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark may not make you rich, it's a great entry collectible that represents American coinage from the post-war era. Next up, the 1983 Jefferson nickel with the Denver mint mark. That's the small d you'll find on the right side of Monticello on the reverse of the coin. On the surface, the 1983 D Jefferson nickel might seem like an ordinary coin. It was struck in large numbers. Over 536 million were minted that year at the Denver Mint. So, in circulated condition, most of these coins are only worth their face value. Maybe a little more if they're in slightly better shape. But what makes some of these coins more interesting is when they appear with mint errors or damage that can sometimes be mistaken for an error, such as what some refer to as a cut or cut error. Let's clarify what that means. A true CUDA error happens when a portion of the die breaks off, leaving a raised blob of metal on the finished coin. These can occur near the rim and are usually quite obvious. Collectors do value these types of mint errors. However, many 1983D nickels that show damage or strange marks are simply mint. Damage, meaning the coin was altered after it left the mint, either through circulation or by accident. If your 1983D nickel shows a strange bump, dent, or cut-like mark, it's important to determine if it's a legitimate mint error or just damage. Post-mint damage usually doesn't add value, and in most cases, collectors are not interested in coins that are simply damaged. On the other hand, a genuine cut error or other confirmed mint error can be worth more. In today's market, a circulated 1983D Jefferson nickel with regular wear and tear is typically worth 5 cents, maybe 10 cents to $1 if it's in uncommonly nice condition. However, a 1983D with a verified cut or dramatic mint error can sell for anywhere from $5 up to $30, depending on the severity and visual appeal of the error. Keep in mind, prices also depend on how much a buyer is willing to pay. Rare or dramatic error coins in pristine condition can sometimes command even higher prices in auctions. If you think you have a genuine mint error on a 1983D nickel, it's best to have it examined by a coin expert or send it to a third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC. Their opinion can make a big difference when it comes to value and marketability. In summary, while most 1983D Jefferson nickels aren't especially valuable, a rare few with legitimate errors could be worth more than face value. As always in coin collecting, the details matter, and condition, authenticity, and demand will determine the true market price. Next up, the 1988 Jefferson nickel with the P mint mark minted in Philadelphia. And talk about how much it's worth today, especially in the kind of condition most of us find coins in: circulated, dirty, or just plain worn from years of use. First, let's cover the basics. The 1988 Jefferson nickel is made of a copper-nickel alloy. Over 662 million of these coins were minted in Philadelphia that year, so they're not rare by any means. The P mint mark is located on the front of the coin, just to the right of Thomas Jefferson's bust. If you've come across one of these coins in your change, chances are it shows some signs of wear-faded details, surface grime, and possibly scratches or nicks. Now, when it comes to coin collecting, condition is everything. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with higher numbers representing better condition. Uncirculated coins, or those that have never been used, can be worth more to collectors. But the average 1988p nickel found in circulation is one that's dirty or worn is typically worth its face value of 5 cents. There are exceptions though. In rare cases, if a circulated 1988p nickel has a significant mint error like an off-center strike, a double die, or a planchette issue, it might be worth a few dollars or more to the right collector. These kinds of errors are not common, and most circulated coins without such flaws still trade for just face value. So, what's the realistic value of a normal 1988p Jefferson nickel in today's market? If it's heavily circulated or dirty, it's still only worth 5 cents. If the coin is in slightly better shape, let's say a higher-end circulated grade, it might fetch 10 to 20 cents from a collector. But that's only if someone is actively looking to fill a hole in a date and mint mark set. In summary, unless your 1988p nickel has an error or is in exceptionally high condition, it's not considered valuable in the numismatic market. Still, it's a great example of modern U.S. coinage, and collecting even common coins can be a fun and educational hobby. Next up, the 1946 Jefferson nickel was minted shortly after World War II. That year, the Denver Mint produced over 45 million nickels, each bearing the D mint mark on the reverse side, located to the right of Monticello. Because of this relatively high mintage, the 1946D is not considered rare, especially when compared to key dates in the series. In terms of design, this coin features a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, designed by Felix Schlag. The reverse shows Jefferson's home, Monticello. Unless the coin has a significant error or is an extremely high grade, most 1946D nickels are considered common. Now let's talk about condition. Coin collectors and dealers grade coins on a scale from poor to mint state. A damaged coin set, as one with heavy wear, corrosion, scratches, or other impairments would fall into the lower end of that scale. These issues significantly reduce a coin's desirability and value to collectors. So, what is a 1946D nickel in damaged or poor condition worth in today's market? In most cases, a heavily worn or damaged example of the 1946D nickel holds only its face value, 5 cents. However, there are a few exceptions. If the damage is minor and the coin still has some collectible features, it might sell to a buyer for around 10 to 25 cents. Coins with more obvious wear and tear, including deep scratches or heavy corrosion, generally don't sell above face value. That being said, some collectors specialize in so-called lowball collections, where they seek out the most heavily worn examples of a particular coin. But even then, the market for such coins is limited, and prices rarely exceed $1 or $2 and less. The coin also has a rare error or variation. If you're unsure whether your coin might have any extra value, you can compare it to graded examples online, or take it to a local coin dealer for an opinion. Keep in mind though, that damaged coins usually don't qualify for professional grading and are not likely to attract premium offers. To sum it up, while the 1946D Jefferson nickel is a piece of American history, its monetary value in damaged condition is typically low. Unless your coin has a unique error or is part of a rare die variety, it's not likely to be worth more than a few cents. Next up, the 1959 Jefferson nickel with the D mint mark. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint and is part of the long-running Jefferson nickel series, which began in 1938 and continues to this day. While many Jefferson nickels are still found in circulation, collectors often seek out specific years and conditions that make certain coins more desirable and, sometimes, more valuable. The 1959D nickel had a relatively high mintage, with over 160 million coins produced. Because of that, it's not considered rare in the traditional sense. However, condition is everything in numismatics. When we talk about a coin in extra fine condition, or XF, we mean a coin that shows light wear on the highest points of the design, but still has most of its original details intact. For the 1959D nickel, that includes sharp features on Thomas Jefferson's face, a mostly clear Monticello on the reverse, and visible details in the lettering and steps. Now let's talk value. In circulated grades, like good or very fine, this coin generally holds only face value 5 cents. But in extra fine condition, it carries a small premium. As of today, in the current market, a 1959D Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition is typically valued between 25 cents and 50 cents. That range depends on the exact quality of the coin. the presence of any luster, and the demand from collectors. While this may not seem like a lot, it's important to remember that the Jefferson nickel series is popular among collectors for building full-date sets. Coins in extra fine and better conditions are often preferred for albums or starter collections. Also, if a coin displays full steps detail on the Monticello building, even at extra fine level, that can increase its value slightly though full steps are more commonly associated with mint state coins. For those hoping to find valuable nickels in change, it's worth checking the condition carefully. Even a slight bump in grade can increase value. That said, if you're holding on to a 1959D nickel in extra fine condition, it's not a high dollar coin, but it's still a neat piece of mid-20th century American coinage with collectible appeal. Next up, the 1941 Jefferson nickel from the United States. We're focusing specifically on the version that does not have a mint mark and shows significant wear or damage, sometimes referred to by collectors as a dot condition coin. Let's break down its background, what affects its value, and how much it's worth in today's market. The Jefferson nickel was first introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel. The coin features a portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front, designed by artist Felix Schlag. The reverse side of the coin shows Jefferson's Virginia home, Monticello. The 1941 version was minted in large numbers at the Philadelphia Mint, which did not use a mint mark at the time. Over 200 million of these nickels were struck in Philadelphia alone, making them fairly common in general. However, the condition of the coin plays a critical role in determining its value. When we talk about a coin being in full damaged dot condition, we're generally referring to a piece that has seen heavy circulation. This might include major scratches, surface wear, corrosion, or even pitting. Sometimes, damage is so significant that parts of the design are barely visible. Unfortunately, damage like this brings the value of a coin down considerably, even if it's quite old dot in pristine, uncirculated condition. A 1941 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark might be worth between $2 to $5, depending on grading. Higher grade examples certified by professional grading services can bring in even more, sometimes in the range of $10 to $15 or more. However, for coins in poor condition with extensive damage, the value drops sharply. A heavily worn 1941 Jefferson nickel, especially one with corrosion or severe wear on both sides, typically holds only its face value of 5 cents. In some cases, collectors might pay a few cents more if the damage is unusual or interesting. But generally, a damaged coin like this is not considered collectible in the traditional sense. That said, some people still hold on to these coins for sentimental reasons, or simply because they enjoy searching through pocket change. While a damaged 1941 nickel won't bring big money, it's still a piece of American history and can be a fun part of a beginner coin collection. To sum up, if you have a 1941 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark and it's in a full damage condition, its market value today is likely no more than 5 cents. It might not be a high dollar item, but it still tells a story from over 80 years ago. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more coin collecting content. See you, and next time, happy collecting. The 2005 Jefferson nickel with a P mint mark. Focusing on its value, even in dirty or circulated condition, the 2005 Jefferson nickel with the P mint mark is one of the more interesting modern coins, thanks to both its unique design and the demand among collectors. But how much is this coin really worth today, especially if it's in dirty, circulated condition? In 2005, the U.S. Mint released 2 different reverse designs for the Jefferson nickel as part of the Westward Journey nickel series. These included the American Bison and the Ocean in View reverse types. Both were struck at the Philadelphia Mint and carry the P mint mark on the front, just to the right of Jefferson's portrait. These coins were made in large quantities. Over 448 million of the Bison design and over 450 million of the Ocean in View design were produced at the Philadelphia Mint alone. Because of that high mintage, most of these coins in circulated or dirty condition are still worth just face value 5 cents. However, there are a few key exceptions that collectors watch for. First, coins with major minting errors can bring a much higher value. This includes things like double strikes, off-center strikes, or die breaks. If you find a 2005 P nickel with any of these errors, even if it's dirty, it could be worth anywhere from $10 to over $100 depending on the type and severity of the error. Another valuable variety is the so-called speared bison error, found on the American Bison design. This error shows a die gouge that looks like a spear running through the bison's back. Even in circulated condition, this variety can sell for $50 to $300, or even more in high-grade examples. Now, if you're looking at a standard 2005 P Jefferson nickel with no errors and it's just dirty or worn from circulation, the market value today is still 5 cents. These coins are not rare in that condition and are not in high demand from collectors. That said, if the coin has any unique qualities, such as toning, or if you suspect it may have a mint error, it could be worth a closer look. You might want to compare it to high-resolution images of known error coins, or even get a second opinion from a coin dealer or grading service. In short, the vast majority of 2005 Jefferson nickels in dirty or circulated condition are only worth their face value, but there are a few valuable exceptions out there. If you happen to find one of those rare varieties, you could be holding a coin worth significantly more than just 5 cents. Next up, the 19960 Jefferson nickel in dirty condition, designed to last around 3 minutes when spoken at a typical pace. In today's video, we're taking a closer look at the 1996 Jefferson nickel with the Denver Mint mark worth and whether it holds any real value even if it's in worn or dirty condition. Now, most 1996 Jefferson nickels were struck for everyday use. In fact, the Denver Mint produced over 800 million of them. Because of that high mintage, they're generally considered common. You'll often find them in pocket change, and most are not rare or collectible. That said, there are still a few things that could make a 19960 nickel worth more than face value. The condition plays a huge role. A coin that's clean, uncirculated, or has a proof-like appearance can sometimes fetch $1 or $2 from collectors. But since we're focusing specifically on a circulated or dirty coin, things change. If your 1996 nickel is just dirty or worn from circulation and doesn't show any signs of errors or damage from the minting process, it's likely worth only its face value 5 cents. In this condition, it simply doesn't stand out to collectors. There are millions just like it. However, there are always exceptions. Sometimes, error coins slip through the cracks. Things like off-center strikes, double dies, or misaligned mint marks can make a big difference. Even in dirty condition, an error coin might still be worth several dollars or more. Sometimes even $20 or higher depending on the type of error and how noticeable it is. To determine whether a coin has one of these errors, you'd need to look closely. That means checking both sides of the coin carefully under a magnifying glass or microscope. Look for anything unusual about the lettering, date, or the way Jefferson's portrait appears. So, to summarize, a regular 1996 Jefferson nickel in dirty, circulated condition is generally worth just 5 cents today. But if that coin happens to have a rare mint error, its value could be much higher. If you think you've got something unusual, it's worth having a professional coin dealer take a look. Next up, the 2016 Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition. If you have a Jefferson nickel from 2016 with a D-mint mark, you might be wondering if it's worth more than its face value. The D-mint mark means it was struck at the Denver Mint, and, like all modern nickels, it's made of a copper-nickel composition. While this coin is very common in circulation, certain factors can influence its value on the collector's market. In general, the 2016 Jefferson nickel was produced in large numbers. Over 700 million coins were minted in Denver that year. Because of that high mintage, most examples found in everyday change are only worth their face value, 5 cents. However, if your coin is in extra fine condition or better, it may carry a small premium among collectors. Extra fine condition, often abbreviated as XF, means the coin has only light wear on the high points, with most of the design details still visible and sharp. It's not uncirculated, but it's clearly better than an average circulated coin. Collectors looking for higher grade examples of modern nickels may pay a small amount over face value for coins in this grade. As of today's market, a 2016 Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition typically sells for about 10 to 15 cents. This modest premium reflects the coin's condition and the collector demand for well-preserved examples. It's important to note that the value can vary depending on the buyer, the coin dealer, and overall market conditions. Some collectors may pay a bit more if they are trying to complete a date and mint mark set in higher grades. For most people, this coin won't bring a large return. But if you enjoy collecting, it's a nice addition to a modern Jefferson nickel collection. If your coin happens to be in uncirculated or mint state condition, especially graded by a professional service, the value could increase to anywhere from 50 cents to a few dollars, depending on the grade and appeal. So, while the 2016 Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition is not especially rare or valuable, it's still worth more than face value to the right collector. It's always a good idea to examine your change. You never know what you might find. Next up, the 2014 Jefferson nickel, specifically in extra fine condition, and exploring what it's really worth in the current market. The Jefferson nickel has been a staple of U.S. coinage since 1938. In 2006, the reverse design was updated to feature a forward-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson and Monticello on the reverse. The 2014 nickel was struck at the Denver Mint and is part of this modern design series. In terms of mintage, the 2014 Jefferson nickel is far from rare. Over 462 million of these coins were produced. That means in circulated or lightly circulated condition, most 2014D nickels are only worth their face value 5 cents. However, coins in extra fine condition or better can carry a modest premium, especially if they show strong detail and minimal wear. In numismatic grading, extra fine condition refers to coins that have light wear on the highest points but still retain sharp details. For a modern coin like this, that's not too uncommon, but it is a step above what you'd usually find in everyday change. That is of today's market. A 2014D Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition typically sells for between 10 and 25 cents. It's a small increase over face value, but it's still not considered rare or significantly valuable. If you're lucky enough to have an uncirculated version or one with a mint error like an off-center strike, a clipped planchette, or the value could be much higher, potentially a few dollars or more, depending on the error type and demand. If you're looking to sell a 2014D nickel, coin dealers and collectors will usually only be interested in coins that are either uncirculated, part of a full date, coins in extra fine condition, unless they have something unusual about them, aren't high-demand items. Still, for beginner collectors, coins like the 2014D Jefferson nickel are a great way to learn about grading, mint marks, and U.S. coin history. And who knows, as time passes, modern nickels and higher grades may grow in value, especially if preserved properly. In summary, a 2014D Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition is worth a little over face value, usually no more than a quarter. In today's market, while it's not a rare treasure, it's still an interesting piece of American currency to keep an eye on. Next up, the 2005D Jefferson nickel. Even in dirty or circulated condition, the 2005 Jefferson nickel with the Denver mint mark is part of the Westward Journey nickel series, which was issued to commemorate the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition. This series includes several design variations, and the 2005 nickels were especially notable due to the temporary change in both the reverse and the obverse designs. The specific 2005D nickel in question can come in a few different reverse designs, notably the American Bison and the Ocean in View types. Both types were minted in Denver as well as Philadelphia, but today we're focusing on the one with the D mint mark, meaning it was produced in Denver. Now, if you have a 2005D nickel and it's in dirty or well-circulated condition, you're probably wondering if it holds any special value. For most circulated examples, the value is generally close to face value 5 cents. However, there are certain conditions and factors that could make your coin worth more than that, even in a worn state. Some collectors look for specific errors or varieties. For example, with the 2005D Bison nickel, one of the most famous errors is the speared bison variety. This refers to a die gouge that appears to pierce through the bison's body, resembling a spear. If your dirty 2005D nickel happens to be a speared bison, even in circulated condition, it can fetch anywhere from $10 to $50 or more, depending on its clarity and market demand. On the other hand, standard 2005D nickels without errors in circulated and dirty condition are very common. Tens of millions were produced, so they are easy to find in pocket change. In today's market, unless it's an error coin, most dealers or collectors would only pay 5 to 10 cents for it if they're interested at all. In most cases, it wouldn't be worth more than face value. Still, that doesn't mean you should immediately spend it. Sometimes coins that look dirty can clean up slightly with professional conservation, although cleaning coins at home is not recommended as it can reduce their value. Also, keep an eye out for full steps on the Monte building. If you happen to find a 2005D nickel from the regular Monticello reverse design, those details can also influence the value, although that design was not used in the 2005 issues. To summarize, a standard 2005D Jefferson nickel in dirty or circulated condition is usually worth face value. However, if it has a rare error like the speared bison, its value could rise significantly, even without being in mint condition. So it's always a good idea to look closely, especially at coins from this unique year in U.S. Mint historical. Next up, the 2021D Jefferson nickel in dirty or circulated condition. If you've recently found a 2021 Jefferson nickel with a D mint mark in your pocket change, you might be wondering if it's worth more than just 5 cents. Let's take a closer look at this modern coin and see whether it holds any collectible value in today's market, especially in circulated or dirty condition. The Jefferson nickel has been in continuous production since 1938, and the 2021 version continues the updated design introduced in 2006. On the obverse, you'll see a forward-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson. On the reverse, the familiar image of Monticello, Jefferson's historic home, remains. The D mint mark signifies that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. In 2021, the Denver Mint produced over 865 million Jefferson nickels. With such a high mintage, most of these coins are still considered common in the world of numismatics. Now, what does that mean for the value? in circulated or dirty condition, which is what most people find in change. 2021D Jefferson nickel is generally worth face value, 5 cents. This is especially true if the coin shows signs of wear, discoloration, or grime. These coins are produced for everyday use, and unless there's something unusual about yours, such as a rare mint error or die variety, its market value remains minimal. However, if you do find a 2021D nickel in exceptionally poor condition, it's still worth taking a closer look before spending it. Some errors, like off-center strikes, die cracks, or doubled dies, can appear even on otherwise ordinary coins. If you believe your coin might have an error, it's a good idea to consult a coin expert or have it evaluated by a grading service. Even so, most verified errors from this year typically range in value from just a few dollars to around $20, depending on the severity and demand among collectors. As of today, a circulated 2021D Jefferson nickel without any mint errors or special features typically sells for no more than its face value. Dealers and collectors are generally not paying premiums for coins in dirty or worn condition from this mintage. If you're hoping to collect or invest in Jefferson nickels, focus on coins in uncirculated condition or those with rare errors. But for the everyday 2021D nickel found in change, it's still a nice piece of modern US coinage, just not a valuable one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. See you in next time. Happy collecting.